Doctor told me this is a safe medicine. I said, it is not a safe medicine. I just called a friend of mine. It has a multitude of side effects. The last end result of this is...
Some disasters don't announce themselves. They slip into a person's life quietly, disguised as nothing more than another restless night.
Can't move. It keeps me from sleeping at night. I can't.
It started with medication bottles, endless nights spent alone, and a mind desperately searching for rest while an unseen battle tightened its grip. From the outside, it looked as though life was finally moving back on track. But away from the cameras and applause, sleep had become something he could no longer reach on his own. What once offered temporary relief was slowly turning into dependence, replacing genuine recovery with a dangerous cycle that few people could see.
Recovery.
Michael Jackson was a drug addict, and he was a master at manipulation because I was manipulated by Michael.
With every passing dose, the dependency grew stronger, pulling him deeper into a haze where the boundaries between hours, days, and reality itself began to dissolve. What started as an attempt to find relief was quietly transforming into something far more dangerous. Then came the moment when the fight for sleep stopped looking like treatment and started resembling a crisis. In the final chapter of Michael Jackson's life, exhaustion became an enemy that never stopped advancing. As natural sleep slipped further out of reach, his private room gradually resembled a temporary clinic, surrounded by oxygen supplies, IV lines, and the constant presence of his personal doctor, Dr. Conrad Murray. Night after night, the routine repeated with growing urgency. Valium, lorazepam, and midazolam followed one another in a relentless cycle, yet true rest remained impossible to find. When morning arrived, the fatigue was often even more crushing, intensified by the demanding preparations for the highly anticipated This Is It comeback shows.
My final show performances.
After every conventional solution failed to deliver the one thing he desperately needed, Michael Jackson reportedly placed his hopes in propofol, a powerful anesthetic he famously called milk. But medical experts would later explain that propofol does not create real sleep. Instead, it forces the body into a state of deep sedation, shutting down the natural process that allows the brain to truly recover. Some specialists even suggested that for long stretches of time, genuine restorative sleep may never have occurred at all. What began as an attempt to escape relentless exhaustion slowly evolved into a dangerous dependency. The line separating sleep from unconsciousness became harder and harder to distinguish. His body appeared motionless, but beneath the surface, the damage continued to build, silently and steadily, until the consequences could no longer be contained. And that brings us to the focus of today's story. A photograph spreading rapidly across social media has ignited intense debate online. The image appears to capture a man resembling Michael Jackson, dressed in a white tank top, overcome with emotion as tears stream down his face. His shoulder-length hair hangs loosely around him while the dark, shadowy setting adds to the image's haunting atmosphere. Some viewers are convinced the photograph is genuine. Others believe it may be the result of digital manipulation. The arguments continue to grow louder with each passing day. What do you see when you look at this image? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. The final emergency. One unexpected moment inside that room would change everything forever. According to Dr. Conrad Murray, he returned to discover Michael Jackson unresponsive and no longer breathing. In an instant, what had been an ongoing effort to manage a medical problem became a fight for survival. CPR was reportedly started immediately, while urgent calls for help were placed and emergency responders rushed toward the residents. Only moments earlier, the room had been quiet. Suddenly, it was filled with panic, confusion, and a desperate race against time. Investigators would later scrutinize every detail, focusing intensely on what happened during the critical minutes between the collapse and the arrival of paramedics. At the same time, the mansion's surveillance system continued running on its automatic overwrite setting. Because only a limited portion of the recordings was preserved at first, additional footage reportedly disappeared before authorities widened the scope of the investigation. Despite repeated efforts to revive him, the emergency ended in tragedy. A medical crisis behind mansion walls. Inside the Holmby Hills estate, Michael Jackson spent his final hours trapped in a cycle that appeared to be growing more dangerous by the night. Natural sleep remained frustratingly out of reach, while the treatments intended to help seemed only to deepen the struggle. Dr. Conrad Murray reportedly began with Valium, hoping it would finally bring the rest that had become so elusive. When it failed, additional medications followed. Over the next several hours, lorazepam and midazolam were reportedly administered one after another, yet meaningful sleep still refused to come. Exhausted, awake, and increasingly distressed, Jackson continued searching for relief as another dose added further strain to a body already operating at its limits. When rest remained impossible, he reportedly asked for the substance he called milk. Eventually, a 25 milligram dose of propofol was administered. Interview 5/14/19. As dawn approached, the final hours became increasingly difficult to reconstruct. Conversations inside the residence appeared fragmented, timelines overlapped, and differing accounts only deepened the mystery surrounding what had taken place. Every answer seemed to generate another question. Yet through all the uncertainty, one fact stood out with undeniable clarity. The sleep he had been desperately chasing never came. What remained instead was a dangerous chain of escalating medications, a growing reliance that had intensified over time, and a situation that had drifted far beyond ordinary medical care. The struggle was no longer simply about rest. It had evolved into something far more serious. Then came the announcement that would stun the world. A statement delivered from a hospital in Los Angeles would soon travel across every television screen, news broadcast, and headline, leaving millions in disbelief. After suffering cardiac arrest at his home, Michael Jackson was transported to Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, where emergency specialists immediately launched an extensive effort to save his life. Doctors employed advanced resuscitation procedures and continuously monitored for any indication that his condition might improve. From the moment he arrived, however, the situation was already extremely critical. Inside the emergency department, medical teams worked against the clock. Doctors, nurses, and specialists moved with urgency, determined to restore a stable heartbeat and reverse the crisis unfolding before them. For what felt like an eternity, every available intervention was attempted. One procedure followed another as the team exhausted option after option, refusing to give up despite the mounting odds. But as the minutes passed, the outcome became increasingly difficult to change. Despite relentless efforts and unwavering determination, no significant recovery occurred, and his condition continued slipping further beyond reach. Interview 6, 38/6, 38/6, 6th, 42. After every available medical intervention had been attempted and every remaining option had run out, Michael Jackson was officially declared dead. Within minutes, the news exploded across the globe. Television stations interrupted programming, radio hosts delivered breaking updates, and online platforms were flooded with headlines carrying the same devastating message. Outside the hospital, heartbroken fans gathered in growing numbers, searching for answers and struggling to process a reality that felt impossible to believe. For many, it seemed unimaginable that one of the most famous and influential entertainers the world had ever known could suddenly be gone. What began as a medical emergency quickly became one of the most shocking and emotionally devastating moments in entertainment history, leaving a lasting impact on millions who had followed his life and career. A breakdown during critical care. A relatively short period of time inside a bedroom at the Holmby Hills residence would later become one of the most heavily examined and controversial segments of the entire investigation. According to official accounts, Michael Jackson was reportedly under the effects of several powerful medications as conditions inside the room began to change. Testimony later provided by Dr. Conrad Murray stated that he stepped away for a brief period and used his phone to handle a number of personal and professional conversations, leaving Jackson without constant monitoring during a crucial stretch of time. That choice would eventually become one of the most debated aspects of the case, drawing intense scrutiny from investigators, medical experts, prosecutors, and the public alike. When Murray returned to the room, the situation had reportedly taken a dramatic turn. Jackson was said to be unresponsive, setting off an immediate chain of events as efforts began to assess his condition and urgently request emergency assistance. In that instant, a quiet room became the center of a crisis that would soon capture the attention of the entire world. Interview 7/48/7/53. The events that unfolded during those crucial minutes were later pieced together through testimony, medical documentation, and investigative reports. Yet even after years of examination, certain details remained disputed. what had started as an effort to combat relentless insomnia rapidly spiraled into a life-threatening crisis. According to findings presented later, the level of continuous observation normally required when administering powerful anesthetic medications was not consistently present throughout the most critical period. That lack of uninterrupted monitoring would eventually emerge as one of the central questions in the investigation. For many who studied the case, it represented the moment when a dangerous situation crossed a line from risk into catastrophe. Those final moments would forever shape the public's understanding of Michael Jackson's last hours. Medical safety under scrutiny. From the outside, the residence appeared peaceful and undisturbed. Behind closed doors, however, a far more serious situation was quietly unfolding. One decision involving propofol would soon become the focal point of intense legal, medical, and public examination. Court proceedings later described the drug as a measure used after repeated attempts to treat severe sleep problems had failed. Propofol is an exceptionally powerful anesthetic, typically reserved for controlled medical environments where trained professionals can continuously monitor a patient's breathing, heart function, and level of consciousness. Its effects can occur rapidly and without warning. Despite those precautions, testimony indicated that the medication was reportedly administered inside a bedroom rather than within a fully equipped clinical facility. To reduce discomfort associated with intravenous delivery, the anesthetic was allegedly given alongside lidocaine, a local anesthetic commonly used during medical procedures. That detail alone raised additional questions. Investigators and medical experts noted that many of the monitoring devices, emergency safeguards, and support systems normally available in hospitals were reportedly not present at the residence. Dr. Conrad Murray maintained that the medication was intended to be carefully managed and administered in a controlled manner. However, numerous medical specialists later challenged whether such a powerful anesthetic could be used safely outside a fully supervised setting, particularly when combined with other sedative drugs already present in the system. As the investigation continued, those concerns became impossible to ignore, transforming a private medical decision into one of the most controversial aspects of the entire case. Interview 9/31/36. The combination of multiple sedatives with a powerful anesthetic soon became one of the most troubling aspects of the entire case. The room itself remained calm and silent, but beneath that stillness, the situation was becoming increasingly unstable. What happened inside those walls would later face intense examination from investigators, with many experts pointing to it as a stark example of the risks that can emerge when highly advanced medical treatment takes place outside a fully equipped clinical setting. The involuntary manslaughter verdict. What began as a private medical tragedy eventually shifted into a courtroom battle watched by people around the world. Medical professionals, investigators, attorneys, and legal analysts all became part of a case that ignited a broader debate about patient safety, medical judgment, and professional accountability. In 2011, Dr. Conrad Murray stood trial as prosecutors argued that the care he provided to Michael Jackson failed to meet accepted medical standards. Throughout the proceedings, expert witnesses repeatedly questioned the decision to administer propofol inside a private residence without the continuous monitoring and emergency safeguards normally required for such a powerful anesthetic. Investigators reconstructed an extensive timeline using phone records, witness accounts, medical documentation, and emergency response reports. Piece by piece, they attempted to determine exactly what had occurred during the final hours leading up to the crisis. Prosecutors focused heavily on the critical sequence of events surrounding the emergency itself. Witness testimony from individuals inside the residence described confusion, uncertainty, and a rapidly unfolding situation during the earliest moments of the crisis. The defense challenged portions of that narrative and offered alternative explanations, but forensic evidence and toxicology findings remained at the center of the proceedings. After reviewing the evidence and deliberating on the case, the jury ultimately found Murray guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The verdict led to imprisonment and the loss of his medical license, transforming the case into one of the most widely followed celebrity trials of the modern era, the 911 call controversy. Even after the verdict, new attention was drawn to a piece of evidence that many believed offered a closer look at the emergency itself. An emergency call released to the public quickly became the focus of intense discussion. On June 26, 2009, one day after Michael Jackson's death was announced, the 911 recording from the residence was made public. Almost immediately, the audio reignited interest in the timeline surrounding the emergency response and fueled fresh debate about what had taken place inside the home during those critical moments. The recording soon became one of the most examined pieces of evidence connected to the case. Journalists, investigators, analysts, and members of the public listened repeatedly, searching for details that might help explain the final chapter of Michael Jackson's life. Even years later, questions surrounding those final hours continued to generate discussion, ensuring that the case remained a subject of fascination and controversy around the world. Interview 11-56/12-01. As details from the emergency call became public, new questions quickly emerged. During the recording, it was revealed that CPR was reportedly being performed while Michael Jackson remained on a bed rather than being moved to a firm surface. Investigators later examined whether standard emergency procedures had been followed correctly during those critical moments. Additional attention centered on the period before emergency services were contacted, as well as reported phone activity that allegedly took place while the medical crisis was unfolding. The race against time, the quiet atmosphere surrounding the residence, was suddenly shattered by the sound of approaching sirens as emergency responders rushed toward the scene. When paramedics arrived, they reportedly found Michael Jackson in cardiac arrest, without a detectable pulse and showing no signs of breathing. Advanced life support measures were initiated immediately as medical personnel worked with urgency, attempting to stabilize a situation that had already become extremely severe. Questions would later arise regarding his condition during transport. Various accounts offered differing descriptions of what occurred on the way to the hospital. Regardless of those differences, emergency crews continued aggressive resuscitation efforts throughout the journey to Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, refusing to stop their attempts to save his life. Yet despite constant medical intervention, no significant recovery was reported. With every passing minute, the odds appeared to grow worse as hospital specialists prepared for an incoming patient whose condition remained desperately critical. The final rehearsal. In hindsight, the last rehearsal would come to be viewed through an entirely different lens. Inside the Staples Center, Michael Jackson spent the evening preparing for the highly anticipated This Is It concerts. Those present described a performer who remained focused on the production, determined to perfect every detail despite the enormous pressure surrounding the comeback. To many observers, the performance looked polished and controlled. Yet beneath that professionalism, signs of physical fatigue were becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. On June 24, 2009, rehearsals continued deep into the night. As music echoed through the arena and preparations moved forward, few could have imagined that these would become some of the final public moments of preparation before events took a tragic and irreversible turn. Interview 14-46/14. Those inside the arena watched as Michael Jackson poured remarkable emotion into his performance of Earth Song. The rehearsal carried an intensity that left crew members stunned, as if they were witnessing something far greater than an ordinary run-through. At the time, no one realized they were watching a moment that would soon take on heartbreaking significance. Only later would many look back and see that performance through an entirely different perspective. As the night drew to a close, Jackson exchanged farewells with members of the production team and spoke about returning for the next rehearsal. It sounded like a routine goodbye. No one knew it would be the last. Back at the Holmby Hills residence, the energy of the arena faded into silence. According to later reports, the battle for sleep continued long after the lights went out. By the next morning, the stage stood empty. What had seemed like just another rehearsal had unexpectedly become the final performance preparation in a story that continues to fascinate and move people around the world: the sedated recording. In May 2009, a recording reportedly captured Michael Jackson speaking while appearing heavily affected by medication. His voice sounded unusually slow, at times drifting between thoughts and struggling to maintain focus. During the recording, he spoke about future plans, charitable projects, and his desire to help children through medical and humanitarian initiatives. The audio quickly became the subject of intense public interest. For many listeners, it raised troubling questions about his physical condition and state of mind during the final months of his life. Investigators, journalists, and observers viewed the recording as another important clue in a much larger and increasingly complicated story. Autopsy revelations. The autopsy revealed evidence of multiple injection sites across different areas of Michael Jackson's body, suggesting a lengthy history of medical treatment over an extended period of time. Years of injuries, physical strain, and ongoing health challenges had reportedly led him to rely on various medications in an effort to manage chronic pain and persistent sleep difficulties. These findings were documented as part of the official medical examination, without assigning motive or drawing conclusions beyond the physical evidence itself. The report also addressed several rumors that had spread rapidly following his death. Contrary to some early media claims, the autopsy concluded that Jackson weighed approximately 136 pounds at a height of 5 feet 9 inches. The findings presented a picture that differed from many of the assumptions and sensational reports circulating at the time, adding another layer of complexity to the public's understanding of his final months. Interview 17 and 57/18, 01. Inside the arena, few people realized they were witnessing history unfold for the final time. As Michael Jackson performed Earth Song, the emotion pouring from the stage felt unusually powerful. Crew members later recalled the rehearsal, carrying a level of passion and intensity that seemed to reach far beyond a normal preparation session. In that moment, it appeared to be just another night of rehearsals. Only after everything changed would those memories take on a far more heartbreaking meaning. As preparations wrapped up, Jackson exchanged goodbyes with dancers, musicians, and production staff. He spoke about returning soon and continuing work on the highly anticipated shows. Nothing about the farewell appeared unusual, yet what sounded like a routine goodbye would ultimately become his last. Back at the Holmby Hills mansion, the excitement of the arena gave way to silence. According to later accounts, the struggle that had haunted him for months followed him home once again. As the night progressed, sleep reportedly remained out of reach. By sunrise, the stage lights were off. The rehearsal hall stood empty, and what had seemed like an ordinary evening had unknowingly become the final rehearsal before one of the most shocking losses in entertainment history. The recording that raised new questions. Weeks before the tragedy, another piece of evidence would quietly emerge and later attract enormous attention. In May 2009, a recording reportedly captured Michael Jackson speaking while appearing heavily influenced by medication. His words seemed unusually slow and occasionally unfocused, drifting between thoughts as he discussed future projects, charitable goals, and his dream of helping children through medical and humanitarian programs. When the audio eventually surfaced, it sparked widespread discussion. To some, it sounded like a man struggling under extraordinary pressure. To others, it raised deeper concerns about his physical condition during the final months of his life. Investigators, journalists, and countless observers viewed the recording as another revealing piece of a puzzle that was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore: the autopsy findings. As investigators searched for answers, the autopsy provided additional details that drew significant public attention. The examination documented multiple injection sites on different parts of Michael Jackson's body, reflecting a history of extensive medical treatment over a prolonged period. After years of physical injuries, demanding performances, and ongoing health challenges, he had reportedly relied on various medications to cope with chronic pain and severe sleep difficulties. The findings themselves were presented as medical observations, without attributing motive or intent beyond the documented evidence. The report also addressed several rumors that had circulated widely after his death. Contrary to many early media claims, the autopsy found that Jackson weighed approximately 136 pounds while standing 5 feet 9 inches tall. Those findings challenged a number of assumptions that had dominated headlines at the time, revealing a reality that was more complicated than many people had been led to believe and adding yet another layer to the mystery surrounding his final months. Interview 19, 29/19, 34. As investigators worked through the medical evidence, a troubling conclusion began to emerge. Medical examiners ultimately determined that the combined effects of multiple sedative medications had severely impaired breathing. Their findings concluded that Michael Jackson's death was not the result of a natural disease process, but a drug-related fatality involving medications administered outside the safeguards of a fully monitored medical environment. The forensic reality. Once the headlines, rumors, and public image were set aside, the medical evidence revealed a far more complex and deeply human story. One shaped by years of physical demands, ongoing treatment, and health struggles that remained largely hidden from public view. The autopsy documented numerous injection sites across different regions of the body, findings consistent with repeated medical intervention over a prolonged period. To investigators, these observations suggested a pattern of ongoing treatment rather than a series of isolated medical events. additional findings painted an even broader picture. The report identified degenerative osteoarthritis affecting portions of the spine and fingers, a condition that may have made rehearsals, performances, and even routine daily movements far more painful than many people ever realized. Behind the flawless stage presence was a body carrying the wear of decades spent performing at the highest level. Investigators also documented urinary complications that required medical attention during periods of heavy sedation. When viewed collectively, the findings revealed a life that had become increasingly dependent on medical management behind closed doors, far removed from the image seen by millions of fans. Medical insights from the autopsy. The examination also challenged several long-standing assumptions. Although Michael Jackson's heart was described as relatively healthy, specialists identified respiratory conditions that may have limited overall lung function and physical endurance. Those findings suggested that fatigue and breathing difficulties could have placed additional strain on him during the demanding preparations for the This Is It comeback performances. Medical experts later noted that reduced respiratory capacity may have increased his vulnerability to the effects of powerful sedative medications, adding another layer to an already complicated medical picture. A legacy larger than tragedy. Yet for millions around the world, the story of Michael Jackson cannot be defined solely by the circumstances of his final days. Behind the fame, the headlines, and the extraordinary success was a person carrying pressures that few could fully understand. His death sent shockwaves across the globe and brought one of the most remarkable careers in entertainment history to an unexpected and heartbreaking conclusion. But the legacy he left behind proved far stronger than the tragedy itself. Through groundbreaking music, unforgettable performances, artistic innovation, and a cultural influence that reshaped popular entertainment, Michael Jackson remains one of the most recognizable and influential figures the world has ever seen. Decades after first stepping onto a stage, his work continues to inspire new generations, ensuring that while his final chapter may have ended, his impact never truly will.